It's been almost 10 years since Modern Warfare 2 came out, and things have changed quite a bit. The Call of Duty franchise is getting pretty, what's the word, deathly ill right now. I mean, it seems like the Call of Duty bandwagon in the past few years left the station and crashed into a giant rock, sending all of its bandwagoners flying in different directions. And then somebody set the wreckage on fire and put the wreckage in a KKK outfit. But I'm going to take you back to a magical place called 2009. Now, 2009 was great because I was young and didn't understand any real problems. But 2009 was also great because it was the release year of the game Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. To say the Modern Warfare series didn't shape the progression of shooters and multiplayer in all games would just be flat out inaccurate. And Modern Warfare 2 is widely considered to be the best game from the series. Now, I know some of you are thinking, hey, wasn't Modern Warfare 1 the game that did all that stuff? And although you're correct, Modern Warfare 1 did come up with a lot of the ideas that would end up changing the way we play video games. I think Modern Warfare 2 was the game that really hit all the bases. And then Modern Warfare 3 took those bases and painted them greenish brown. It's a shame that current Call of Duty games are tarnishing the legacy of this franchise, because this franchise back from 2007 to 2012-ish was known for not just being a big name, but making good games. And a lot of people don't know this. I feel bad for people that started playing Call of Duty after 2011, because they don't know what they missed. I mean, seriously, look at the lineup from 2007 to 2011. It wasn't all amazing, but all the games were either really good or pretty solid. Then you take that and compare it to the lineup from 2012 to 2017. That lineup is, debatable. Like, looking at these two groups, does anybody seriously think the second is better than the first? I've yet to find a single person who played through the first era that thinks any game from the second era is the best. I feel like that says something. This year they're gonna release Black Ops I. I'm sure people will buy it for the zombies and that will be that. But for me, just zombies isn't enough. So it's fun to look back at when they seem to care about their games. Enter Modern Warfare 2. Modern Warfare 2 has the unique quality you don't find very often, where every single part of the game is done well. It has three primary game modes: campaign, spec ops, and multiplayer. And the crazy thing about Modern Warfare 2 is, if you talk to somebody about it, they will likely be like, oh, that game is awesome. But they have a solid chance of liking it for a completely different reason than you. Some people love the campaign, some people love the multiplayer, and Spec Ops existed. They didn't half-ass any of it, minus one or two Spec Ops missions, but I'll get into that later. They obviously cared about making a product that was actually good, which is more than you can say about AAA games now. Every time I buy a AAA game now, I get deja vu, because they all seem to follow the same formula. It's like they all use the same template, and it really sucks, especially when it comes to certain developers. Anyways, I'm going to be breaking down why this game is as good as it is. I'm going to start with the campaign, but before I get into that, I want to comment on how great the main menu screen is. Three things: campaign, spec ops, multiplayer. If this game was following the template now, it would look like this. It would have a list of stuff on the left with an animated 3D model, some character or characters standing in the middle-ish right of the screen with a bunch of particle effects. Then it would have like a bunch of boxes and alerts trying to get you to buy like the pre-planned DLC they try to pawn off on you. Loading this game up for the first time in years is like entering a time machine to a better era. Anyways, back to the campaign. When most people think about Call of Duty, the campaign isn't what comes to mind. They think about the massively successful and recognizable survival mode from Modern Warfare 3. Remember that? I don't. Okay, seriously though, the campaign for Modern Warfare 2 is really good. And I don't mean really good for a Call of Duty game either. I just mean really goddamn good. In my opinion, a Call of Duty campaign should give players two things: awesome set pieces and a story that connects the set pieces with writing that doesn't feel forced. And Modern Warfare 2 delivers. Literally every single level in this game is super memorable. And connecting the memorable levels is a story that actually makes sense, and is, although not the greatest story ever made, really fits with the theme of the game and is definitely entertaining. The way they structure the story is actually ingenious too. They through the story have you alternating between several different characters, most of which are part of either the American Army Rangers, whose missions are larger scale and more epic, you could say, or the British American Task Force 141, who tend to have more intricate missions. This works for many different reasons. It's an effective means to deliver the set pieces the game sets out to deliver, and it does it without the spectacle seeming super forced. Most of the later games in the series, you would play through the campaign as mostly one character, and it was always ridiculous to think all this crazy shit happened to this one person. It took you out of the game. But in this game, they have people in completely different situations, so it makes more sense. But the situations are still related to each other, so every level progresses the story. The structure they chose made sure everything had to do with everything, and they weren't just different stories that were unrelated like in some other titles. Now there's a lot more to address here in the campaign, so I figure it would be easiest to just go through the campaign mission by mission and address whatever comes up whenever it comes up. I guess this would be a good time to say this review will contain spoilers, so if you don't want the 2009 video game Modern Warfare 2 spoiled, I guess don't watch this. So when you press play, the game puts you in this cutscene thing. These play in between the missions and are kind of how the game expands its characters and progresses the story. They all consist of some graphics and animation on screen, but what really makes these stand out is the voice actors. All of the voice actors in this game do an amazing job of making their character unique and badass. In this specific cutscene you hear Shepard, a general of the US Army, talking about what happened in the world since the events of the last game 5 years ago. All it really tries to get across is that Russia is now super ultra nationalist and they idolize the guy you killed last game. But it doesn't really super clearly state that, so I could easily see how somebody who didn't play the first game would have no idea what he's talking about. This game doesn't necessarily require you to have played the first one, but I think the experience will be a bit better if you have, especially at certain points. Anyways, back to Shepard.
Locations change. The rationale, the objective. Yesterday's enemies are today's recruits. Train them to fight alongside you, and pray they don't eventually decide to hate you for it too.
Now, some people have said he's kind of a walking cliche, and I can sort of agree, but fuck you, Shepard's cool. That's my detailed counter-argument. Maybe if the voice actor for Shepard did a worse job, it would be an issue, but I feel like it just works because although it sounds like he's always trying to be super quotable, he just sounds like a badass, so it fits his character. After the first cutscene, you start the mission SSDD, which stands for Same Shit, Different Day. I've always wondered if it's called SSDD because it sounds cool or if they just didn't want to put the word shit in the title of one of the missions. I think it's the latter, but this is the same game that lets you participate in the mass shooting of a Russian airport, so I don't know who would have made that decision. In SSDD, you play as Joseph Allen, one of the better soldiers in the army, and you're helping Sergeant Foley teach new recruits how to properly shoot. I actually really applaud the writing to SSDD because it turns the tutorial level into something that actually progresses the story and characters. Not only gives a little background on Foley and Dunn's characters, but it also teaches you about your own character. It successfully establishes that you're playing as somebody who's good at their job, and it uses that as an excuse for you to be showing other soldiers how it's done, and why you would be running the pit. The second part of the level has you run the pit to display your skills to General Shepard, who's looking to recruit somebody for a special operation. I really like the pit, maybe it's just me, but I could run the pit for hours, which is bizarre because the tutorial level in games are normally super boring. Hey, if General Shepard is watching you run the pit, couldn't you just kill him and skip the... Man, this game sucks. It doesn't even let you kill your commanding officer, 0 out of 10. After you run the pit, the game recommends a difficulty for you to play on. You will not survive. Well, that's just me, and I don't know what to say. After you run the pit and pick your difficulty, the mission ends. Something I've always liked about the cutscenes is they show you information, not just about the story, but about what equipment you're going to be using in the mission. They also sometimes end up going way more in depth than they have any right to. Sometimes they will literally have like a full page of information flash on the screen for like half a second, but if you pause the game in post, you can read it and actually learn a lot about the characters and places. But unless you were to go and try to pause it, like you can't pause it mid-game, so it's just kind of wasted information, which I find kind of weird. The end of the cutscene has Shepard saying history is written by the victors, a recurring theme in this game. Except he uses it in what I believe to be the wrong context. I've always viewed that quote as a warning that most of the time the winner of something gets the last word, but he uses it as encouragement, which is actually pretty cool foreshadowing for what happens. Team Player has you continuing your quest as Joseph Allen. I personally consider this to be the most pointless mission in the game, which is not to say it's bad, it's actually still good, but I feel like it could have been completely taken out of the game, nothing would have really changed narrative-wise. I think they put it in so it would function as a neutral introduction level, but I'm not really sure. It starts with Shepard standing over you telling you to get up and into the fight. This scene has always raised two questions for me. One, how did Allen get there laying on the ground? Like, there aren't any crashed trucks or anything. Was he just taking a nap? And two, why is Shepard reloading his revolver? He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that walks around with an unloaded gun. So I guess he was just taking pot shots at the people across the river with his revolver, which I find very strange. I also find it strange Shepard is yelling at you to get up and do something, but he's fine with this guy just sitting around eating chocolate. He seems very calm for somebody who's taking heavy fire from the enemy. This guy just doesn't give a shit. Anyways, after that, you get in a truck and watch a building get bombed. As you do that, somebody says, "Since when does Shepard care about danger close?" Which is a line that shows up like 4 times in this game. I guess it's a running joke in the military. Anyways, I think it's time to talk about the gameplay. It's good. It's kind of hard to explain, but I still think this is by far the most satisfying game in the franchise, next to Modern Warfare 1. Everything has the right amount of weight to it, which is good because I think a Modern Warfare game should feel heavy in a sense, but Modern Warfare 2 is also tight. Something I don't like about some of the later COD games is they felt very floaty. This game manages to make everything feel responsive while still keeping the necessary oomph to all the weapons. All the guns feel good and unique. They all control and sound different, which is a big deal. The average person doesn't look at sound enough when thinking about games, but I think part of why Modern Warfare 2 works is because the weapon sound design is really good. A lot of the later COD games had a lot of weapon sounds sounding very similar, which was another reason I don't like them as much. I'm gonna go more into gameplay when I talk about multiplayer, but for now I want to get back to the story. So you get in a Humvee and you play through a cool Humvee sequence. And after that, the level is pretty basic. You go through buildings, shooting people, normal COD stuff. Whenever you die, the game gives you a quote, most of which are cool, but I think they should have had some of them stick on the screen longer, because the longer ones I can only read like half of. Revenge. At first though sweet, bitter ear long back on... Okay, fuck me then. This game also has jokes.
Yeah, I'm cutting through history class now.
Anyways, you kill some people and at the end Shepard lets you into his task force. They could have just had Shepard let you in after you ran the pit, but the level is cool, so I guess it doesn't matter. Cliffhanger is the third mission and the first mission that has you playing as Task Force 141. You play as Gary Roach Sanderson accompanied by John Soap McTavish, who you played as in the last game. Your goal is to retrieve a downed module from a crashed satellite before the enemy can crack the code and get top secret information. Now I'm not the first to say it, and I likely won't be the last, but Cliffhanger is fucking awesome. This mission has everything. Action, stealth, cool set pieces, it has it all. You start out scaling a mountain to get to a military base, which is super awesome and amazing in every way. Then you have to jump across a giant gap. Hang on for dear life. That's a weird quote. Why doesn't it have a citation? After that, you infiltrate the base during a snowstorm, which is awesome. The heartbeat sensor your gun has means you're like a stealth machine in this segment. It's super cool and replayable. I mean, you basically get to play as a ghost. No, I mean the good kind. You sneak through the airfield and plant a bomb just in case things go south, which they do when you find the module. Another cool thing about this mission is you can let your commanding officer die. 10 out of 10. Best game ever. After you explode the thing, you run across the base, which is awesome. Then you steal some snowmobiles, which is awesome. Then you enter a snowmobile chase, which is awesome. And then you jump across a big gap to get to the emergency LZ, which is completely ridiculous. But awesome! This mission and everything about it is awesome. This is how you make a mission. It's all substance. None of it's filler. If you ever met a human that doesn't like this mission, cease contact with them immediately. They are likely a sociopath. No Russian gave the game a lot of heat when it came out because it allowed the player to participate in the mass shooting of an international airport. Don't worry though, they aren't Americans. Land of the free and home of the not fucking dead, am I right? Although I think this level is not really amazing or anything, I do applaud its existence. I've always felt creative direction should be more important than trying to please some people not even in your target demographic, and I think it's incredible that this massive budget game took the risk with a PR hit I'm sure they had to have seen coming. If this game was released today, I'm sure there's no way they would include this in the game. Some people who don't understand the story of this game seem to think this mission makes no sense, which I don't understand. And I think a lot of the people that played the game also don't get the point. So I'm going to explain why this happened. You go back to playing as Joseph Allen and it's your new job to go undercover to get close to Makarov, a terrorist leader who's just in general a bad guy. In order to earn Makarov's trust, Allen participates in a mass shooting of an international airport. But Makarov, knowing Allen's true identity, at the end of the level kills Allen, leaving his body behind so the world would think America was behind the attack. I'm not sure if Shepard knew Makarov knew about Allen, but I know he didn't want Makarov dead because he wanted to use him as a villain, and he did want Russia to attack America because that's the only thing that would restore the perceived dominance of the American military, and it would at the same time wipe the slate clean for what had happened with the nuke 5 years ago. So Shepard used it to his advantage either way. Now everybody should understand this mission wasn't pointless. It's probably the most important mission in the game narrative-wise. Other than that, there isn't much to talk about. The mission itself is fine. Its goal was to get you to dislike Makarov, which it did well, and it set the primary primary events of the game in action. One more thing I want to point out is that Shepard's name means somebody who herds sheep, and he spends the entire game manipulating people around him. So I don't think this name choice was an accident. Anyways, next mission. In Takedown, you play as Roach from Task Force 141, and Shepard wants you to find the arms dealer that supplied the Russian airport attack, interrogate him, and gather information proving America's innocence. The execution of this mission is really awesome. You start off in a car, before you know it, Mr. No-Name driver next to you is dead, and you're chasing your target on foot. You then have to shoot the guy's feet to keep him alive, and your team interrogates him for information on where the arms dealer is. At that point, you start going through the favela looking for the arms dealer. I don't know who you're fighting in this level, but some of them look like they're like 17, so I'm pretty sure you're just murdering kids indoctrinated in a group mentality. So this level is one of my favorites in the campaign. The level design is unique and awesome. The close range combat the favela provides is really interesting, and it's likely one of the best designed levels in the game. I like how you just walk into this favela that has civilians in it, I should add, and this whole group mobilizes to kill you. Like, some of these people have RPGs. I like to imagine one guy walked up to another like, "Hey Steve, these 3 guys just came into the favela, we should probably stop them." And then Steve's like, "1 second, let me get my RPG." If you're fighting on home turf, it seems like excessive use of explosives is a bad move, especially when your homes are made out of metal sheets and duct tape. But hey, I guess public education failed them too. As the level progresses, everybody on the task force who doesn't have a decorated voice actor dies, which is pretty much expected. Eventually you catch the guy you're looking for, but for some reason Ghost can't get any air support for extraction. Wolverine depicts the Russian invasion of the US because of the airport attack. You go back to playing in Foley's unit, but as Private James Ramirez, which is quite the infamous name, because it started the whole Ramirez do everything meme, which if you don't know about, well, here you go.
Ramirez, come to the alley! Ramirez, we're at the crash site. Get over here!
Ramirez, get to the roof and check out the supply drop.
Ramirez, get the f*** on the roof! Good kills, Hunter 2-1, good kills. Ramirez, take your team and secure the Burger Town.
The execution of the opening of this mission is very well done. The opening cutscene is one of my favorites and has this quote.
Sierra Delta, we may have a minor ACS fault here. Do you have anything on your scope? Sierra Delta, repeat.
I'm looking at fighter jets over I-95! How the hell did they get through?
Which on its own is an awesome quote, but add that to the opening part of the level itself. The execution is extremely well done. Everything about it is very emotional. Part of the reason the campaign seems like such a blockbuster thriller film is because they got Hans Zimmer to write the OST. If you don't know Hans Zimmer, he's the guy who did the soundtrack to Inception, Interstellar, and Boss Baby. Boss Baby. Looking at Hans Zimmer's career, this guy will do the soundtrack to anything. Zimmer, my man, you're a legend. Why are you doing the soundtrack to Boss Baby and Kung Fu Panda 3? Anyways, that's off topic. The soundtrack is awesome and has tracks ranging from emotional to intense. The entire level can really be summed up in a few seconds. Ramirez, go take the Burger Town. Ramirez, go take the restaurant. Ramirez, go take the diner. Ramirez, go take the restaurant. Ramirez, go take the taco joint. Ramirez, go take the diner. The entire level takes place in a commercial block off the freeway, and you spend the level running in a circle, taking and retaking like 3 locations. Seems tedious, right? Well, it's surprisingly well done. I don't know how they did it, but they managed to make this level fun. I mean, it's not one of the best, but it's good. It really makes you wonder how the Army Rangers would even function if not for Ramirez, though. Like, he literally does almost everything. It kind of makes sense in the task force because they're supposed to be the best, but Ramirez is just some random private. Why does he have to do everything? The Hornet's Nest is just kind of Takedown Part 2. It shares pretty much everything that level did well. Essentially, the task force can't get evac because of the war in the USA, so they need to call Nikolai from the last game, a Russian loyalist who's a pilot. I really like this level because it's more of what Takedown did well, but it's different enough to not be boring. The level opens up basically right where Takedown left off, and you have the usual suspects, but 2 more people in your squad somehow. If you can't get air support, how the hell did these guys get here? Anyways, as expected, these guys are essentially doomed from the start and will most likely die. Not much to say other than that until the end of the level. So Nikolai tries to land, but he can't, so then he goes to the backup LZ, recurring theme I must add, and you botch the jump. The rest of the crew makes the jump and get in the chopper while you're unconscious for an unknown period of time, trademark. Then you have an awesome escape set piece where you run through the favela unarmed trying not to die. In the end, you jump to the chopper and grab a hanging ladder. The mission is sweet, I like it. The following mission has you back with Ramirez, and it's another fairly unique one. It's your unit's job to take back suburbs from invading forces. This mission stands out because of the tools it gives you to do this, mainly the Honey Badger, which is like an armored car tank thing. You basically get to shred enemies with this, but it doesn't work on its own. You need to mark targets for it using your laser pointer that you have on your gun, and all of the guns you pick up through the level. I'm not sure how I feel about the idea of using laser pointers to mark targets, considering how obvious it must be and how easy it would be to abuse if you're the enemy. Like, if the enemy marked you, would the Honey Badger just kill you? It must be pretty automated considering how it'll just run you over without thinking twice. And it's not just the Honey Badger either. You mark airstrikes with these things. Like, what if some other units had laser pointers and they just accidentally fired at those instead? Seems like a really bad idea. Anyways, this mission is cool. It's the only mission in the game that really lets you fight in suburban house-to-house combat, which is a lot of fun, and surprisingly missing from a lot of FPS games. The only easy day was yesterday goes back to the Task Force 141. You return to playing as Roach and have to take a Russian-controlled oil rig with SAM turrets on it so your aircraft can counterattack Russia. And so you can get to Prisoner 627, the guy who has information on Makarov, a guy who was also in the Russian Gulag. This mission has a lot of variety. You start off on these cool little submarine things as you approach the rigs. What the hell are these things anyways? Then you have a stealth sequence with slow-mo breaches and everything. Eventually they find out something is up, so you plant C4 on some dead bodies and blow up a room full of confused enemies. Then you have a firefight on the oil rig. The last parts of the level contain an awesome segment where you have to use thermal weapons to see through smoke thrown by defending forces. This is one of my favorite segments in the game because it changes the way you have to play a ton, which is nice because COD games don't tend to have much creative variety. The Gulag is basically the only easy day was yesterday part 2, but done to near perfection. In your attempt to break into the Gulag to get Prisoner 627, you have a stunning amount of variety. I would say that this is the level that really encapsulates everything this game is about. So it starts right off on a helicopter you ended the last level on. I think McTavish has something going on with his hair. It's kind of transparenty. This level also features the only propane tanks in any video game ever that don't explode. Miraculously, you actually get off the helicopter without it crashing, which is new ground for a Call of Duty game. Helicopters don't tend to last long, especially if you're on it. So you get off the helicopter and begin your search for 627. You fight your way to the cells and Ghost delivers this masterpiece of a line.
Working on it. This hardware is ancient.
Your squad finds out 627 is on the other side of the Gulag, so you start heading over there, but end up getting trapped in a cell thing. Ghost continues having trouble operating the complicated door technology, so you pick up some conveniently placed riot shields and hide in the cell like a little bitch. I like this part because it kind of forces you to yield, which is rare for really most FPS games in general. Eventually he gets the door open, you kill some dudes, and get to a fun night vision segment where the night vision is optional. Hey man, the goggles make it hard to see when I'm shooting, don't judge me. Now the night vision part has a problem because you fight down this hallway with cells on both sides, and the devs were so kind to put shotgunners that kill you in like one shot. A little bit of a dick move, but I'll look past it because this game is awesome. After you get past the cells, the Navy starts bombing the castle early. Shepard says they aren't in a talking mood, which is funny because I made a stupid joke and you should ignore it. Shepard gets them to stop for the time being, and you eventually end up getting to this awesome part where you breach into the showers and have a firefight. Apparently this rips off a movie or something, but it's fun, so I don't really see how that's a problem. You then find the mysterious prisoner 627 and get punched in the face. Now for the big reveal. Who is 627? It's Price.
This belongs to you, sir. Who's so?
You see, this guy didn't play the first game. I really like the execution of this scene and how the little name indicator thing shows up around the time anybody who played the first game would recognize him. It's a nice touch. But now that you found him, the Navy has advanced past non-bombing mood into bombing mood, so you gotta get out of the Gulag. In a thrilling escape scene, your squad ends up trapped, but a convenient 10-layer hole is here so you can signal your position and escape the Gulag with your life. Convenient. Oh yeah, also this Randy somehow survives. Of Their Own Accord is not the mission with the most intense set pieces, and it isn't the mission with the best gameplay, but it's my favorite mission in the game. Because if the Gulag perfectly encapsulates Modern Warfare 2, Of Their Own Accord perfectly encapsulates why people consume media in general. It has atmosphere written all over it. The pacing, reveal, and music make this scene exceptional. It's epic, awesome, and sad at the same time. This scene is why we play video games, to take us somewhere we haven't been before. And this level does that perfectly. I mean, the entire level is great, but the beginning makes most not just levels, but video games pale in comparison. At the end of the level, you get to just shred invading forces with a minigun. Normally, I don't really like turret sections, but honestly, this just feels good. You literally just destroy everything in your path, which is awesome because invading DC was a dick move, so fuck those guys. I know it completely contradicts the tone of the beginning of the level, but I don't care. At the end of the level, the chopper crashes. I know, right? Shocker. While the battle in DC is going on, the player switches to the mission Contingency. Price, who's just been rescued from the Gulag, has a conflict with Shepard in the opening cutscene of this level. Shepard wants to focus on killing Makarov, but Price wants to focus on ending the war between the US and Russia.
What's this image you're sending me?
You want to put out an oil fire, sir? You set off a bigger explosion right next to it. Sucks away the oxygen, snuffs the flame.
Price, you've been locked away too long. Better get your mind right, son.
Shepard, are you willing to do what is necessary to win?
Always.
We got ourselves a pretty big fire. Gonna need a huge bang.
You've been in the Gulag too long, Price. Focus on taking out Makarov.
No time, sir. We need to end this war today.
I'm not asking you, Price. This is an order. You're to...
Looks like we lost our connection.
This scene really makes Price immediately likable, which they needed because he only shows up in the last 1/3 of the story, so they couldn't do a ton of character development. In the mission itself, your job is to attack a Russian sub base and prevent the sub from escaping. The mission starts with you and Price stealthily making your way to the sub base to regroup with the rest of your team, which is a great time to get the player to acknowledge Price isn't just some guy, he is the guy. But there's a problem. As you and Price are trying to spend quality time together, a big tank thing shows up. And it's not just a big tank thing, it's a big tank thing with a big gun thing on it. So you and Price run into the woods to escape while the tank thing shows extreme disdain for nature. Then you do more stealthy stuff like sneaking around and shooting people. And doing the thing where you shoot multiple people at the same time so nobody can alert the base of the attack. Which is cool because you get positive reinforcement from Price, which makes me feel special. Eventually you get to the sub base itself and you have to race against the clock to get to the submarine before it can depart. And I can tell you one thing. I did not die an embarrassingly large amount of times in this section. That didn't happen at all. For real though, this section is a little unfair to the player. Like, I don't believe anybody can reasonably get to the checkpoint before time runs out without just booking it to the checkpoint when there's like 20 seconds left and hoping the enemies are having an off day. Maybe I just suck, I don't really know, but this is the only part of the game that really gave me any serious trouble. Anyways, once you break the game to get past that section, Price goes into the submarine to prevent its escape, but he actually ends up accidentally launching a nuke at the US and having it detonate in the upper atmosphere to create an EMP blast that would severely hinder the Russian invasion. Hashtag relatable, am I right? Second Son and Whiskey Hotel are two separate missions, but they're basically inseparable. There isn't even a cutscene in between these two. That's literally the only occurrence of that in this game. It's just a loading screen. Maybe it's because of the EMP blast, I don't know. The mission continues right off from where you had crashed in the helicopter. When you awaken, you find your team pinned down in the crashed chopper running low on ammo, backup, and non-developed friendlies to kill off. I mean, if there are no more Randys to kill off, somebody who actually matters might die, so you know things are getting real. But since in these games you play as the luckiest people in the world, Price's nuke detonates, completely throwing the invading forces off, leaving you to dodge helicopters and planes falling from the sky as you run through the streets to cover. I really like this part because it's just pure chaos. And if you look up during this segment, you see a bunch of shit falling from the sky, which triggers a human reflex to panic immediately. Once you find cover, the crew realizes that optics are down, meaning all the guns with scope attachments are really annoying to use because they don't have a center anymore. This really limits what guns you can comfortably aim with. It's not like you can't use the guns, but it's annoying. And in wartime, minor annoyances should be taken into serious consideration when it comes to decision making. As you walk through the streets, you find a runner who says the plan is for the remaining squads to meet up and take back the White House because it still has power. And with the power, they can communicate with HQ. As if the atmosphere in the level wasn't already good enough, it starts raining mid-level, so it becomes extremely dark, making the combat even more tough because you can't really see anything. You don't know who your allies and enemies are, so your squad is constantly in fear of every single piece of movement they see. Once you get to the meetup point, you join the fight and take back the White House. Although not as glorious of a set piece as the one in Of Their Own Accord, something about fighting on a shredded White House front lawn is just awesome. Once you retake the side building where they do the meetings and stuff, you hear a message coming from the wall-planted speaker saying if important government structures are still under friendly control, the army should pop green flares on the roof of the structures to wave off scheduled bombings across DC. So now not only are you fighting to take back the White House, your squad is single-handedly sprinting through the White House, running and gunning, trying to take it before the bombings occur, which is totally epic. The music starts up and you're just thinking, man, fighting to take back the White House so you can wave off friendly bombers is fun. And then you get caught up in the moment and sprint headfirst into a room full of enemies like a jackass, immediately getting yourself killed. Which, hey, in times of crisis, questionable decisions are made. You can't blame me, this is war. Once you get to the roof, you pop the flares just in time trademark and save the White House. Then you hear Dunn and some guy talking about how they want to burn Moscow to the ground for what happened here, which is kind of understandable. I mean, for example, if somebody called my dog stupid, I would want to call their dog stupid. This is just a slightly larger scale version of that. Loose Ends is likely one of the most memorable levels in the game, if only because of the ending. The mission starts out with you walking through the forest, and then all of a sudden these mine things are flying into your face and you need to get down to avoid the explosion. What the fuck is up with these things anyways? Whose idea was this? Anyways, after that you breach into the estate, which anybody who played the multiplayer should remember. Inside the estate you murder some civilians because they don't understand how to properly use computer monitors, and you steal some information. As you're running away from the house, they shoot mortars at you because mortars are the best weapon for all situations. Anyways, one hits you and you get knocked down into this ridiculous sequence where Ghost is dragging you out in the open and you're shooting people and somehow don't get shot despite having no cover. I'm 90% sure this only exists because in Call of Duty, a level can't just end. It has to shoot off into space and explode into 1,000 flaming pieces, then explode into 1,000 more pieces, form into a fucking lion, and then the lion explodes into 100,000 pieces. So yeah, the ending's a little over the top. After that, you give the stolen information to Shepard and he shoots you in the stomach as an eccentric way of saying thanks. And then, the unthinkable happens.
Cause you had a bad day. You take the one down. You sing a sad song just to turn it around. You say you don't know. You tell me don't lie. You work on a smile and you go for a ride. You have a bad day. The camera don't lie. You're coming back down and you really don't.
But the old saying stays true. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I think what people should really be taking away from this is don't be the second in command for the majority of the game or you're gonna get killed. Anyways, so Shepard shoots Ghost and Roach, which contrary to popular belief isn't just because he's a dick. He wanted to make sure nobody could ruin his legacy since he was declared a war hero, and the only people who had information on his connections to the airport shooting were Price, Soap, Ghost, and Roach. So he kills them using Shadow Company, an elite private military contracting unit. I really do like how this scene is done, and I especially like how right after getting killed it has Price radio in to not trust Shepard since they're under attack by his men in the boneyard. Unfortunately for Shepard though, he forgot Price and Soap have actual character design, and in this game that means they might as well be fucking invincible. Enemy of My Enemy takes place during the events of Loose Ends and follows Price and Soap's attempt to escape the trap Shepard set at the Afghanistan scrapyard by having Nikolai come pick them up in his plane that he got somehow. How the fuck does he keep getting this shit? Seriously, he's like a drunk Russian. How does he have all of this? The setting for this level is really awesome because the scrapyard surrounding creates an interesting cover dynamic found nowhere else in the game, and I like it. Another thing I like about this level is that it's the only level where you have two factions at play other than your own fighting each other. So you can wait to let them kill each other, or you can just run in like a dipshit like I do. Maybe it's just me, but it seems like Shadow Company soldiers are able to take a lot more damage than the Russian ultranationalists. Makarov's vodka junkies seem to melt in comparison. Throughout the level, you hear Price have a conversation with Makarov over the radio, asking him for any intel he has on Shepard. I really think this segment is cool because it's ultimately two people who hate each other working together because they know they have to. And you understand that despite how shitty Makarov is, there are bigger fish to fry at the moment. Makarov gives you Shepard's location. At the end of the level, you have to escape the scrapyard in this Jeep sequence that's turned up to 11 because it's this game. Oh man, a driver who has a name I haven't heard before? I'm sure this is gonna end well. Oh wow, you're dead. Oh no. So after you get onto the plane, the level just like old times starts. In the opening cutscene, Price has an epic speech.
Price?
The healthy human mind doesn't wake up in the morning thinking this is its last day on Earth. But I think that's a luxury, not a curse. To know you're close to the end is a kind of freedom. Good time to take inventory.
It really sets the stage for the level. This is their last resort and they're ready to cut Shepard into pieces. So anyways, you break into the radio channel Shadow Company is using and shoot some dudes just like old times, you know? Because that's the name of the level. Very clever. After that, you rappel down this cliff, stab some guys, and enter the facility. I've always wondered how Price and Soap even pulled this off, since the cord they rappel down is actually pretty loud, and Price's shadow should be completely visible. Your shadow, on the other hand, is mysteriously well hidden. So you enter the facility and start sneaking around.
Top of the staircase. He's mine. Roger that, Oxide. We're on the catwalk heading to the steam room. Stand by. Never mind then.
That leads into this cool segment where you're getting breached on in a dark room with a bunch of laser sights all over the place. It's cool, and if you don't think so, well, I don't like you. This is around the time the Shadow Company HQ was like, we gotta get Gold Eagle out of here. And Gold Eagle, if you couldn't guess, is Shepard. What's the point of having code names if you're gonna name the most important guy Gold Eagle? Like, obviously that's gonna be Shepard. So eventually you have to breach into this room and avoid shooting the explosives or else the room blows up. Apparently the people who made this game don't know C4 wouldn't blow up if you shot it, which is really bizarre considering the other subtleties that they did well. Anyways, you get into the room and Shepard is like, we're blowing up the facility. So he blows up the facility, killing many of his own guys, but you escape because you hack the mainframe or some shit to open the doors and start your chase of Shepard. The last level of the game is called Endgame. Very creative. Cutscene before this level contains another Price speech because apparently one wasn't enough. Not that it's bad, I just think it's weird. Did they write two and like couldn't decide, so they were like, hey, play the second one just in between, just like old times in Endgame. Nobody will think that's weird at all. So you're chasing Shepard through the river system and you have to make sure you don't die. Price claims he'll cover you, but if you're playing on veteran, he doesn't do jack shit, so you have to drive with one hand and try not to die with an Uzi in the other hand. Really fitting end level for this game, I must say. Anything less than this would just be a disappointment. Later in the sequence, Shepard escapes into a helicopter and you have to steady the Zodiac so Price can down a pave low with a glorified hunting rifle. After that, Price tells you to put it in reverse, but the boat disagrees with that and sends you flying off the waterfall as an act of rebellion. You somehow survive, wake up on the shoreline, and head towards the crash site to make sure Shepard died. Of course he didn't, despite the fact all these other people wearing helmets and armor are pretty fucked up and Shepard was just wearing a slightly over-the-top ego. You pursue him to a rusted car and are left to finish the job, which you fuck up somehow and end up on the ground with a knife in your stomach. Man, if only you had a gun, you could have just shot the guy and avoided this whole situation. Anyway, Shepard gives you some boring speech about patriotism, a speech so boring in fact that Price tries to kill himself directly after it ends. They start dueling as you try to get to the gun. Unfortunately, Shepard sees what you're trying to do, kicks it away, and gives you a swift boot to the face. At this point, you're too injured to even really move, so you just sit and watch Price get his ass kicked by a senior citizen, until you realize that there's one last thing you can do.
Cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort. Suffocation, no breathing. Don't give a fuck if I cut my arm bleeding.
After you kill Shepard, Price patches you up, Nikolai shows up, he says "da" because he's Russian, and the credits play. So yeah, the game's pretty good.